Hey everyone, Chris here of Iron Horse Woodcraft, and today I'm going to show you a little review of the subcompact multi-material saw from Ridgid. The multi-material saw is a pretty versatile little saw. It's basically like a mini circular saw. This one comes with 3 different saw blades. So you get a 3-inch drywall and plastic blade, a 3-inch metal blade, as well as the 3-inch tile blade. Now all the blades are a 3/8 inch arbor on the inside, but the saw does also come with a 7/16 adapter, so then you can also use other blades. I believe Dremel uses that size, so it gives you a little bit of more versatility in purchasing other aftermarket or other brand blades if you need be, especially from the Home Depot where you're going to find most of the Ridgid products. Now, one of the first downsides that I found about this saw is the lack of a wood blade, and every other multi-material saw that I've looked into from all the other brands, they all seem to lack a wood blade. So I'm not quite sure why that is and haven't been able to find a definitive answer. The only guess that I can come up with, and this has no actual factual information behind it aside from the fact that it's just a simple theory of mine. When you look at many of the wood blades and the construction of the teeth, and these teeth are constructed in a way to be able to pick up the wood shavings and then actually clear them out of the area, whereas a lot of these multi-material saws are constructed in a single piece. And then when you add on, if you look at a circular saw, you have the safety blade that comes with it, whereas you don't actually have that with this type of saw. So I'm not sure whether or not this is just a matter of safety as opposed to giving you a jagged little blade at the bottom, or it's just basically an oversight. But it's kind of hard to believe that every single saw maker, and even the aftermarket like Diablo and Spider and all these other companies that make blades, nobody makes a 3-inch wood saw blade. So I'm sure that there's a reason why, just nobody's been able to tell me what it is. Moving on from that, let's have a little tour of the saw itself. So it's a very lightweight unit, very tiny. Obviously you have your blade guard right here. You have switches here to be able to change the direction for forward and reverse. You have your lock here to be able to tighten things down when you're changing blades. And then of course it comes with your Allen key for the blade change as well. As with most Ridgid products, if you give a small little press of the trigger, then it'll turn on the LED light that's on the front. And then full depression of the trigger gives you the blade actually operating. So let's put our first blade on. So you need the Allen key from its little holding spot right there. And this Allen key will also operate the nut to be able to loosen up or tighten your guard. So I can lift that up and down. And then pressing down on your blade lock here. We'll loosen this off. And you have here, it even is marked outer flange. And on the inside there, it's the inner flange. So, and it even says faces the wheel there. Okay, so we tighten it down, and again, you can adjust this however you need for the guard. And there's your first blade on there. One thing that you'll note, especially if you decide to go with one of the larger batteries, is when you add the battery on, it really can get in the way of the material that you're cutting. So one thing that you can do is, not necessarily recommending grabbing in this area when you're have the battery on, but you can actually pivot. So then now with a large battery on, you can cut down and not have to worry about the battery hitting into things. Certainly a large battery like this adds a considerable amount of weight to it, but if you're going to be doing long amounts of cutting, then the more power, the better. So enough hear me babble. Got the metal blade on there. Let's take this thing outside and cut some stuff, and obviously let's start with something metal. To start things off, I decided to go with a lightweight metal. Not exactly sure what type of metal this actually is, but it's not really much to it. It was actually pieces of old shelving that I had in the kids' room. The metal blade had no problem cutting through this stuff. The only downside that I first ran into was basically the depth of the blade, and even with the blade guard pulled all the way up as much as it could, it still wasn't able to do one cut in a complete pass. The piece of metal that I was able to cut through was a piece that I found at one of the local restores, just a Schedule 40 pipe. Had no problems cutting through, except for the same problem that I had with the shelving piece, is I just ran into issues with the depth of the cut versus the actual thickness of the pipe itself. I next changed out to the drywall blade, but I didn't realize if I didn't adjust the head of the cutter, which you can see right here that I ran into the battery, but at the time I wasn't quite sure what was going on. At first I actually thought that I hit my table, but I adjusted the swivel head and went back at making the cut, making sure that the larger battery that I had on there was now out of the way. Even tried out doing a few plunge cuts, which obviously the saw had no problem doing. Just had to come back in with a small little utility knife to clean up the cuts, since obviously you're dealing with a shallow cutting circular blade. To change things up, I decided to test out the plastic blade on a piece of plastic. So my kids were throwing out this broken Nerf gun and needed to cut it down so it would actually fit inside the garbage, and this gave a good opportunity to be able to cut it down. Since we don't actually have a wood cutting blade, I decided to try out the drywall and plastic blade on some wood products. The first up was some melamine. Because of the thickness of the melamine, of course, ran into a thickness issue with the size of the blade. And then next came up a small piece of pine or spruce. And again, I had no problems cutting through it, just ran into the same issue of the thickness of the cut. This all left me wondering, what could this thing not cut? And in hindsight, I probably should have kept my comments to myself. So I went back to the metal blade and decided to cut up a old chalkboard, since I had metal edges and some type of slate type thing for the chalkboard itself. In hindsight, this was a terrible idea. As you can see, it ate away the blade itself. So here you can see a full-size 3-inch blade, and here's what's left of my metal blade. Oops. Finally up is the tile blade. So I had a scrap piece of tile, had no problems cutting through here. This has a nice advantage for quick little small cuts if you need when doing any type of tile work. Obviously a wet tile saw is great to cut down on how much dust comes up. Finally used the saw to also try to do a plunge cut through the tile. And I've heard of some people having some issues with control when trying to do this, but I had no problems with the blade jumping around or losing control of the saw itself, so it worked quite well for me. So there you have it. This is Ridgid's subcompact multi-material saw. Quite a wide variety of options that you can use to cut different types of materials, hence the name multi-material. Although certainly, as you can see, you need to be careful of using different blades on random materials, because then you're going to be finding yourself going out and buying a new blade. So on that note, I'm going to head out to Home Depot and get myself a new metal blade. Thanks for watching.